one of the things that caught my attention was that you had mentioned, hey, really want to get into some questions here for your background on group consulting, one-to-many, cohort consulting, peer group consulting, lots of different names. And I'm thrilled to talk about that topic, thrilled to dive deep on it even. For me, there's almost a two-part discussion though, and the building block that goes before group consulting is really the central question that was the genesis of why did we start putting nonprofits into groups to begin with.
And why was that?
Yeah, the problem we were trying to solve was, why is it that we see certain organizations being so successful with this technology, and then we see other organizations that seemingly match the exact same profile of that organization, and they're failing with the exact same technology investment?
Welcome, everybody, to the Profit Meets Purpose podcast presented by Constant Method, where we explore how for-profit companies can thrive while supporting nonprofit missions. Welcome to the Profit Meets Purpose podcast. Today, my special guest is Adam Lemmon, who has been in the nonprofit tech industry for over 20 years with companies like Tatango, Charity Dynamics, One Cause, Blackbaud, but many people in the industry, Adam, recognize you for being a foundational member of the GO program at Convio. And if that name doesn't ring a bell for our audience, that is the company that Blackbaud acquired with products like TeamRaiser. And so, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
No, thank you, Mark. Thrilled to be here.
We were just getting into... We had to pause for a moment and backtrack and do the proper intro because you were all the way in on answering the question of where did the GO program at Convio come from? So first question for anybody listening who's not familiar with Convio or the GO program, give us the 2-minute, this is what Convio was, this is what the GO program was. And then I really want to know more about where did it all come from.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Convio was an online fundraising platform built for nonprofits. You know, in the beginning of the 2000s, 2001, 2002, it's unbelievable to remember that there were a lot of people who looked at online fundraising and they said, you know, these little tiny gifts are interesting, but this is just never going to work. Donors are never going to give large gifts online. People aren't going to pull out their credit card and make these kinds of donations. It's just not going to work. And
how'd that turn out?
Right?
Are we far enough away that we can say it worked?
It worked. Pretty unbelievable to reflect back on that. So Convio had a lot of buzz, and there were, by all means, other platforms, other providers building cool tools, but Convio really had a lot of momentum. It had built an amazing online fundraising platform, online donations, online peer-to-peer fundraising with TeamRaiser, events, calendar tools, volunteer management, even e-commerce for nonprofits. So a lot of tools all built into one. We had a lot of momentum, which meant we had a lot of excitement, which meant we had a lot of customers. And there was a challenge that came with that, which was, okay, this is exciting that we have a lot of customers, but now all of a sudden we've got a challenge, which is new nonprofits are coming in. They see these tools, they see what other people are doing with these tools, and they want to do that as well. How can we help them? They've chosen the tool, they've invested in the tool. How do we make sure they go one step at a time and get the right steps in place to do the right things to be successful with these tools?
And I have to imagine back when all of that started, the early 2000s, when you say use the tools, we're not talking about the like WYSIWYG, drag and drop type tools of today. I think it's sometimes easy for us to forget how long ago 20 years was in the context of the internet age. So describe what that experience was like when you say like they would have to learn it or know it. What was required on their end?
Yeah, I think that's really great observation that you just made right there. I think the biggest thing was that when you would log in on the Convio tools, one of the things that was unique at that time was there was a menu across the top or across the side, depending on what timing you came into the platform, but there were a lot of options. So adopting and using the tools didn't just mean logging in and building a donation form. It meant logging in and being overwhelmed with, what am I doing with my email campaigns? What am I doing with my peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns? How does that connect and work with my donation forms? How does that connect and work with some of my other campaigns I might be doing, or some of the other tools I might be leveraging? And again, the list of options was really, really long. So a lot of organizations would say, man, I'm so excited about this. They buy it, they get into the tool, they immediately start asking questions about X, Y, and Z. And it took all of us, them and us, a long time to realize, oh no, they're excited about X, Y, and Z. We need to back up, and we need to remind them that you've got to focus on A, B, and C before you can progress forward and start getting into some of the more advanced things. So to your point, where it was a new dawn, it was a new age, it was a new era, there was a lot of shiny, there was a lot of distraction, there was a lot of cool stuff that could be done. But when it came to core fundamentals of good fundraising online, let's make sure we're paying attention to the basics first. And that was, again, part of the beginnings of the Go program.
So tell us about that, the beginnings of the Go program. Where did it come from, and why did that end up from? Because, transparently, I've talked to a lot of early Convio people who point to the Go program as the reason it was ultimately so successful. Tell us about where it all came from.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this, so I don't want to exaggerate, and I also want to be careful about how I frame it. It was certainly interesting. The true genesis was that Gene Austin, the CEO of Convio, came to the team and said, hey team, we've got a problem. We've got a real problem. We have a ton of organizations that want to be using these tools. They're investing in the tools, they're signing a contract, but the reality is it is taking us far too long to get them in that time to value. It's taking us too long. So the reason I say I almost stutter to share that out loud is the truth is that was a little bit selfish on the part of Convio, where we were trying to solve an us problem.
A time to value problem, which is not, I'm assuming there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this whose current companies have a time to value problem.
Well, that's fair. And I do, and while it's also a selfish problem, it's also a problem that's solving something for the customer, right? The customer is making the investment. They want to get that time to value down as well. So it does solve problems for lots of people. I think some of what we discovered really surprised us while we were solving problems for ourselves. Oh my goodness, we indirectly began solving a lot of problems for our customers as well. And when that starts to happen, that's why you get those stories you're pointing to of, holy smokes, this was lightning in a bottle. All of a sudden, we were able to increase the quality of service, increase the speed at which they could adopt the tools, increase the satisfaction, increase the connectivity, increase the sense of community that organizations had while they were adopting these tools, and just kind of all around help everyone feel better about what was happening. So.
But there is a way to do it, though, that is, we just hire more customer success or onboarding people, and we put everyone through this defined, heavy one-to-one coaching plan that when I talk to companies, they say, that's great, but we don't have the money to hire all these people. That's not a scalable investment. You talk to investors who are investing into the tech sector, and they're very cognizant of how many people does it take to scale the successful adoption of your platform. They don't want to invest in companies that are bogged down with people to make all of this happen. So knowing all of that, tell us more about the Go program and how it uniquely solved those challenges of, we need them to adopt and increase the time to value for both parties, but we can't do this on a unscalable one-to-one level.
Right. Scalability is key. And that was part of the challenge that Gene Austin issued to the team. Patrick Hansen and myself were both on the Convio team. Gene Austin had issued the challenge to the entire company saying, we have got to find a way to do exactly what you just said, Mark. We've got to find a way to make this scalable. It was literally over a happy hour after work that Patrick Hansen really shared the idea. The idea of the Go program came from Patrick Hansen. He coined the term the Velocity program, which he and I started tinkering on that. And we kind of said, hey, this might work, this might not work, this might work, this might not work. And we knew we were on to something. Patrick's idea was to say, we can see that for the organizations that do experience success in this platform, there is a pattern. So if we tap into that pattern, if we pay attention to that pattern, if we work to repeat that pattern, maybe we could bring lots of organizations into a program where we spell out for them, this is the pattern, this is the plan, this is the way forward.
So pitch that back to you. It is, you looked at users on the platform and said, these are the characteristics, these are the behaviors of organizations who are successful with our tools. How do we get everyone to do these things?
That's right. That's right. How do we get them to stop stressing out about X, Y, and Z further down the road and start with A, B, and C? I'll give you a very, very, very perfect example of this. A lot of organizations would come to the Convio platform, and one of the first things that they would want to launch would be a very advanced, complicated email marketing program that was based on insane amounts of conditional logic, audience management, data-driven groups to make sure different people got different content. This is smart stuff. People accuse nonprofits of not being sophisticated. That's BS. Nonprofits are extremely sophisticated. They know what they want. They can look at their audience and they know their audience better than anyone else. They want that complex sequence of communications that resonates with the audience in the right way at the right time. So they buy a platform. That's the first thing they want to work on. But what we actually noticed was, no. The first thing you need to build is a welcome series. And that might sound really, really boring, but we've seen a pattern. Organizations that have a simple welcome series to onboard every single constituent the same way with the same voice to say, welcome to our organization. We're glad you're here. And here's what you can expect. And when we built that same welcome series over and over and over, we saw open rates shoot through the roof.
So to dig in on a word that you said there, which is when we built welcome series, who was building who was doing the work in the platform? Was that part, did you all do the work for them at any portion? How was that done?
Yeah. So in the early days of the Go program, it was a one-man show. Patrick and I had created the program. I onboarded a group of organizations, welcomed them to Convio, and we went one step at a time, and I guided them through that process. And it was a little bit Wild West. I would jump in and build a lot of things for them. I would guide them and train them on how they could build that. We would do group calls to teach that. Eventually, it evolved, to answer your question, into a situation where the Go program had web development resources on tap, and I was able to direct our customers to send me their content in a very easy to see format, make it very digestible, make it very clear. Clarity is kindness. And then I would take that clear content they gave me and I would pass that to our web development team. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn that I'm still in touch with today that were a core part of that. Glenn Peck and Quentin Johnson were the original developers at Convio that would do a lot of the build out, building welcome series, building email campaigns, building donation forms, building all kinds of things in the back end of Convio. And they would do that at scale because we were able to simplify the content stream from the client.
And were they paying for this? Was there a cost to this program, and how did you all work through that?
Yeah, there was absolutely a services cost to the Go program. However, we were able to bring the costs down quite a bit because I was scalable. I was able to have a peer group that had 5 organizations in it. And I had some peer groups that had 10 organizations in it. I had some organizations that had 15 organizations in it. And one of our strongest consultants was Rachel Ahrens Tolbert. She's since been married, but she and I are still in touch. She was able to lead peer groups of 21, 22 organizations at a time. Wow. And the first time that she took on a peer group of that size, I made the classic expert mistake of telling her that's not going to be possible. And Rachel essentially told me to hold her beer and watch her cook. And she did it. And Mark, here's one of the most remarkable things about watching her do that. It flew in, all of that just flew in my face, right? Like my comment that wouldn't be possible. It was the opposite. By having 22 organizations present on those calls, that cohort of organizations leaned in harder. Because when it came time to build the monthly sustainer giving programs, you had maybe 5 or 6 organizations out of the 21 or so that they came and they said, here is our monthly giving program and here is how we promote it. Holy moly. You have 22 customers who have a built-in path to see the answer to the number one question that customers ask, which is, what are the successful customers you have already doing? It's right here. You've got a cohort and you can see what they're doing.
Yeah. So to kind of bring this into the modern age for our listeners, I think what's wild about this discussion, when you and I first talked, I made this observation. At Constant Method, we speak to nonprofit tech companies and consultants and agencies day in and day out. And I don't know of anyone who has replicated this model for their software, but nearly all of them ask a version of the question, how do we help get our customers onboarded faster without spending too much time and internal resources? And everyone seemingly thinks it's either we need a one-to-one coach or we need a platform that, highlights all of the tips and do this first and do this next, which is great. There's plenty of modern software that can do that, but it takes a lot of tech resources to build all of that. First question is, if this was successful, why aren't more nonprofit tech companies following this model?
There's a cliche quote that everybody in the world claims. I don't know if this came from Harvard or Texas A&M University or where it came from, but the quote is, this thing is impossible to understand from the outside. And once you're inside, it's impossible to explain the magic of what is happening. And I don't know where that quote comes from. I love it. The Go program is impossible to explain from the inside, because once you start seeing this magic, you look at it and you go, what in the world is happening? I'm pulling out a prop. Give me 1 second. So that's part of it. It's very hard to describe. We were trying to solve a selfish problem, which was how do we make this less painful for us? How do we move customers along more quickly? How do we solve our problems? By creating a community that was accessible for the customers, where they got to bond and connect and be a part of something together, we had no idea the magic that we were about to create. I love a conductor's baton. I fell in love with a conductor's baton while I was managing the Go program because I felt like a conductor. And somebody used that analogy, and I started thinking about conductor's baton, and I would use my pencils like conductor's batons. Those at Convio might remember whenever I got all of you singing Bohemian Rhapsody together. using a conductor's baton, right? That came from this conversation about the Go program, which is, can you be brave enough and bold enough to say, I know what we need to do. I know where we need to go. I need you to watch. I need you to pay attention. I need you to look up here. And if we do this together, it's going to be Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? But you've got to trust me. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing for organizations to trust somebody who's going to lead a people into the wilderness.
And first of all, this is maybe our 12th episode, 11th episode. We've never had a prop. First time in the history of the podcast. Foundational member of the prop bringers. For anybody who's listening to this and says, I think this might work, or I'd be interested in understanding more about it, I'm assuming those people can reach out to you on LinkedIn and ask questions.
Oh, absolutely. No, I love talking about this. I think some people have told me I talk about it too much. Reach out. I'm here.
As a person who talks way too much about everything, guilty as charged. So I appreciate it. This was fantastic. It was great getting a glimpse into the history of the Go program and thinking about it today in the modern age. For the last statement here before we leave, my question would be, what would you say to somebody who is in charge of solving this problem at their nonprofit tech company today, and they think either, well, this is not going to work for us, or I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do first to test and see whether this would work for us?
Yeah, I follow the question. I think one thing that makes my bicycle wobble a little bit there with the question is, you mentioned if you're dealing with an individual who's thinking, would group consulting or a scalable consulting or a peer group consulting, cohort consulting, again, whatever you want to call it whatever. If we're thinking of somebody at a software company, I think you have to really dig in on what you're scared about. We talk about goal setting. No, that's fine. Set your goals. Understand your fears. Identify your fears. Lay them out there. Talk to your leadership about assumptions, concerns, constraints, and all of that. What are you scared of? Because if you're onto something good, you're going to be a little scared. Dig in on that. If we're backing up for a moment and we're thinking about a nonprofit organization, I don't know. I guess that gets interesting, because where my mind goes with that is nonprofits are often challenged with, there's a lot of technology out there that I want to consider. There's a lot of technology out there that I want to adopt. And I think that's maybe a little bit of a different problem. I don't know if I'm making sense with my bicycle wobbling a little bit.
What about the tech companies who that question of like, okay, this is something we think we want to test. What do we do first? Is it as simple as doing what you all did, which is understanding like, what are the successful companies on our platform doing? Is that where they begin with this discussion?
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yes. Two things on that. Yes. That last thing you said is exactly right. Look at the patterns. Look at your customers who have been successful, understand the patterns, understand what worked well for them, understand why they had a different journey than that customer who made the same investment, but it just didn't work out. What were the differences? Write those things down and pay attention to that. I think the other answer as well is pilot, test, try it out. Don't wait, jump. Let's go. Take a step forward, give it a test, give it a try, and you're going to learn a lot. Be willing to try something and fail, because that's going to allow you to get things in motion. And a really, really just great example of this is people think that customers don't want to be in a peer group with other customers. I boldly assert, invite some of your customers together with you there. I think the conversation will go differently than you expect if you allow the customers to manage the conversation. I think you'll hear things very differently than what you're expecting.
This is a great call to action to end on. So for anyone listening to this in your company who struggled with how do we efficiently and effectively get our customers to quickly onboard and adopt our software, Adam is saying, don't be scared. If you're scared, buy a dog. If you really want to make an impact, go try something, do it right away. Figure out, write down, do the analysis, figure out what your customers need to do to be successful, and then go try it. Try it once with a cohort of people in what will ultimately be the worst way that you ever do it. And if it fails, find me and find Adam, and we will reimburse you for your time. Mostly Adam will pay you back.
This is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, you're very welcome. But I won't reimburse you for anything to do with that puppy. I didn't tell anyone to buy a puppy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Adam. I really appreciate it. Reach out, connect with you on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at constantmethod.com or myself, Mark Cross, on LinkedIn. But Adam, as always, thank you.
Oh, hey, thank you. Y'all take care.
This has been the Profit Meets Purpose podcast presented by Constant Method. Be sure to subscribe to hear more episodes like this wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, visit us at constantmethod.com.